Hey, I'm William, and in this video, I'm going to be going over the best-selling books of all time. So I'll try to go through the list pretty quickly. I want this to be as informative as possible. I made a short about this topic, and there were a lot of questions there, so I figured it would be good for us to take a little bit more time going through all of the picks. My goal is for you to walk away from this video knowing not only what the current best-selling books of all time are, but how that list is likely to change in the near future. The book that's usually ranked around 20th on these best-selling lists is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. This is a coming-of-age story, very well known because people have to read it in school, but it's one of those few that you read in school that people also just genuinely like. Positions 19 through 14 are dominated by a book series that probably most of you have read all the way through. I highly doubt that you're surprised that the Harry Potter books are making this top list. None of the sequels in the Harry Potter series have individually sold more than 100 million copies, but I'll go ahead and note that if you add the book sales up of all of these books, it's somewhere in the ballpark of 400 million to 500 million copies sold, which is absolutely insane to think about. That's so many copies. The next book on the best-selling list is usually ranked about 13th, and I bet one of the Harry Potter books is going to catch up to it really soon. That's The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. People have mixed opinions about this book, but generally I think it's better the younger you read it, and I really love the core message of the story. The Alchemist is about pursuing your dreams and realizing your potential. Next up at number 12-ish is a book that I honestly didn't expect to see on this list, The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. This is definitely still his most popular book, and if you were old enough to have memories at the time when that book came out, you'll remember how much it was talked about all over the place. Literally everyone and their mother was talking about it. The Alchemist and The Da Vinci Code have sold a similar amount of copies, so honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they do some flip-flopping. And then coming in at 11 on most lists, with like a few more million copies sold, somewhere between 85 and 90 million is what I'm seeing in most of the lists that I'm looking at. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. The rest of the series has sold a ton of copies too, but it does not compare to the Harry Potter books. The Harry Potter books are only continuing to move up the list because relative to the other books that we've talked about already, they're just continuing to sell more copies. Number 10 at a little bit over 100 million copies sold, a casual 100 million copies, is Think and Grow Rich, which I haven't read and don't ever plan to read. Number 9 is a story that I really love and have very fond memories of, The Hobbit. I really love this leather-bound copy that I've got, but it's getting a little bit tattered, so I might need to get a new one soon. Coming in at number 8 at around 105 million copies sold is Dream of the Red Chamber, which is a Chinese novel. I haven't read it, and I don't hear it talked about too much, but I am intrigued just based on the description of the novel. It's about the rise and fall of a royal family, and apparently it's most notable for depicting the female characters pretty well. It was published in the late 1700s, so it's had plenty of time to sell copies. It does not surprise me whatsoever that there's an Agatha Christie book on this list, and then there were none. And then coming in at roughly number 6, it's not surprising that this book is on the list, is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you live. And again, if we add up all the Harry Potter book sales, that series would be right up at the top of the list. It's important to note before I finish up this list that these aren't exclusively novels. I already mentioned Think and Grow Rich, which came out in like the 30s. It's a self-help, self-improvement book that's been around for forever. One novel that's really hard to rank because apparently there isn't very good data on how many copies were sold is The Count of Monte Cristo. And so I'll just go ahead and guess that it would make the top 20, if not the top 10 of all time, if we had better data on it. The next book that we do have better data on, and I'll call this number 5 on this list, is The Little Prince, which is a children's story. And that one is only continuing to sell rapidly. So I wouldn't be shocked if it climbed the list a little bit higher over time. Coming in at number 4 or so is a slightly controversial pick because some people think of it as 3 books, but the author thought of it as one story, and it is technically just 3 separate parts of one longer book. You can probably guess what it is. It's the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. So that's The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. The reason why I'm fine with that being listed as one book and not the Harry Potter series is because The Lord of the Rings was initially envisioned as one big story. Tolkien wanted to just put it out in one big chunk And Harry Potter is like the definition of a series. The story structure is super similar in each book, and each of them is very much so a sequel to the one before it. Coming in at number 3, and this would be the number 2 novel if we were only considering novels, is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Makes a lot of sense that it would be ranked this highly because Dickens was extremely popular, and this book has had a lot of years to sell copies. And then the undisputed number 1, the best-selling novel of all time, is Don Quixote by Cervantes. This is another one that's had centuries to rack up book sales. And my understanding, based on the limited reading that I've done about this book, is that we do have a better sense of how many copies were sold compared to a novel like The Count of Monte Cristo. The estimations for how many copies Don Quixote has sold is somewhere between 400 million and 500 million. Most people seem to think it's more like 500 million, whatever. Regardless, it's the best-selling novel of all time. And then the number 1 book, and we're excluding religious texts for right now, is a Chinese language dictionary. It's a reference book, the pronunciation of which I'm going to botch, so I'll just have the title up on the screen. I don't really like having that one at number 1, but I'm seeing it referenced in enough places as having sold more than 500 million copies, so I guess it should be included. Anyway, to be very clear, Don Quixote is the best-selling novel of all time. Harry Potter is the best-selling series of all time, and that reference book has sold the most copies of any individual book, except for religious texts. I hope you found that rundown to be valuable and at least somewhat interesting. I'll be making book-related content indefinitely on this channel, so if you got something valuable out of this video and you aren't subscribed already, definitely consider doing so. My name is William. I'm the author of a novella called Fumes, and I'll see you in the next video.